have watched this show begin. We have traveled the entire country in search for commercial farmers.
Cassava is now a cash crop in Teso.
Farmers from across Uganda have benefited from agriculture.
Somebody who is doing fish farming, this is an opportunity, a huge opportunity, in that the market and the demand is already available.
I realized there was potential in goat farming. I started with around 30 goats.
You don't need a lot of money to start, but rather the heart and determination.
Intending farmers is to have a positive attitude and start.
It doesn't need the person to have gone to school or to have not gone to school. Possibly keeping is one of the projects that have money.
You go home, you come back to harvested honey.
And who said there is no market?
Like that fish pond, where it is, I've stocked now 700 fish.
What I've seen in agriculture is that the market for produce is there.
All you need is you to make a difference.
Everywhere you go, people do just about the same things, but we thought if we could just put some spunk into agriculture.
Farming comes in many packages. It takes courage, determination, focus, and above all, the zeal.
I have a passion for animals.
Stop feeling pity for yourself. Don't blame it on anyone. Stand up and do something. Farming is fun. Join us on this program and let's make the world we live in a better place.
You, the viewer outside there, don't you see it is just lively?
At Seeds of Gold every Saturday only on NTV.
Good morning, welcome back to Morning at NTV. My name is Malaki Vilodera and today we're talking about service delivery in the health sector. What issues are there? Is it a policy issue, an implementation issue? That's what we'll get to know today. And in studios, I have Mr. Moses Dombo, who is the Chief Party Advocacy for Better Health. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Earlier on in the show, we had Andrew Chamagero get to Chirudu Hospital. They have been grappling with matters to do with the sanitation system there. You know, the sewagery has been, you know, causing issues for even the residents living around there. And so the doctor there came to the fore to tell us that the issue was the septic tank could not hold the waste that they, you know, generate on a day-to-day basis. He put case in point the issue with the dialysis machines. So he said that for every single kind of, you know, session, then the machines require over 200 liters to just, you know, process and work. And so there's a lot of waste that is being generated, and there lies the issue. So infrastructure is part of this. What can the government do to ensure that the policies are implemented with regards to that front first?
Well, thank you very much. I don't have all the details about Chirudu per se, apart from what I have read in the papers. But from the snapshot you just gave me, it speaks to one thing, and I think as a country, we need to take planning seriously. Many times we do things without proper planning. Chirudu Hospital, everybody should have known that they have these machines. They should have known that there's going to be so much waste. Why then didn't they plan for a big enough septic tank to handle what they're dealing with today? I wouldn't be surprised if, in terms of addressing the issue, again we see somebody coming up with a little tank to try and solve the problem in the immediate without looking at the long term. Uganda as a country has a national development plan, which is popularly referred to as NDP2.
Right.
Why doesn't the government fund the health needs as defined in its own NDP2? It's a national development plan. We need to be looking at years down the road. Uganda has one of the fastest growing populations in the world.
Right.
We have one of the highest fertility rates in the world. We should not be planning like we are living in 1960, where we are expecting the population to grow at a rate of 2% or 1%. Our population is growing at more than 3%. How do we plan for a population that is growing so fast? Uganda has one of the youngest populations in the world. A very significant percentage of our population is below 30. Very sexually active, many of them, very active and reproductive. We have very many teenage mothers, unfortunately. So all these children that are being born are people. They expect to partake of the same services.
Yes.
Is government planning for them? Is the planning looking beyond the now? That is the question we need to be asking ourselves. So Chirudu is basically a symptom of a bigger problem.
Of a bigger problem. And we've not just gotten to even the rest of the centers as well. And this is a big issue, sanitation. Now, let's move away from sanitation, and we've seen the big issue is the planning bit. Now, in many public health hospitals, people do not pay for the services. Actually, government provided for it to be free services to all in most of the centers. Is this sustainable?
I am one person who believes that we cannot sustain health service delivery at the rate at which it is right now. Yes, it is popular to say we are giving free services, but free services when there is no medicine in the hospital, free services when the health workers are sometimes absent, free services when a health facility has only one midwife, free services, and yet we have to serve all the people that come to partake of these services.
Right.
We can provide free services with better accountability. I don't think it is a question of us not having the money. I think the money is there. I think the resources can be found. We need to also look at the issue of accountability. If we promise that we are going to deliver something, we should commit ourselves to deliver what we promised. In the NRM manifesto, there is a very important statement that references health. In the NRM manifesto 2016-2021, the focus is on ensuring efficiency and effectiveness in delivery of health services in the next 5 years.
That's until 2021.
That's until 2021.
Right.
So we are already 2 years into
Yes.
the manifesto. So efficiency and effectiveness is what we need to be discussing in the health sector. Are all the resources needed being allocated? Are all the resources that are allocated being used for what they have been allocated for?
That's the question.
Are we satisfied? Are we convinced that we are getting value for money in every investment we are putting in? This is the only country, I believe, where the issue of value for money is not taken seriously. You find contractors who have messed up activities. I recently visited a health facility in Western Uganda, where a desk, an office chair, wooden office chair, was said to have been bought for 750,000 shillings. And the health in charge had written to the DHO of that district complaining, and he had never received a response.
Wow.
He had never received a response. Value for money.
Right.
At every level of service delivery, we need to be asking ourselves, is everybody accountable? The managers that are in charge of health facilities, they need to see themselves as being in charge of people's lives. They are responsible for those men and women who are losing their lives because the funds were either diverted or not utilized for what they were supposed to have been utilized. The people at the ministry who are not delivering those services, they need to see themselves as being accountable. Uganda as a country is not short of documentation.
Right.
We're not short of policies. I think Uganda as a country has probably some of the best policies anywhere on planet Earth. The issue is on implementation. Can we move away from talk to implementation?
To implementation.
An implementation that is supervised and managed.
Right.
Performance-based. Accountability is very important.
You mentioned about resources being diverted, and yesterday in the dailies we saw a story about the Abim District Hospital, the residents there coming out to complain that they're having infant mortality rates skyrocketing. And so they were saying it is as a result of negligence by the workforce in the hospital. And also it came to the fore that the van that is used for maternity issues, just to get, mothers to the hospital, is being given to the district for other issues. The diversion of resources, is that rightful? Who's to be blamed for this?
It cannot be rightful. I think accountability, as I said, is a governance issue. We have levels of management.
Yes.
We have levels of leadership. Of course, we have a president in the country, but the president cannot be in every place doing everything.
Correct.
That's why we have ministers. There's a minister of health, and the minister of health has other support ministers, ministers of state. There are permanent secretaries.
Yes.
There are levels of accountability. In the district, we have a chairman or chairperson LC5.
Yes.
We have an RDC. We have a cow. Then we have a health in charge. We have LC3 chairpersons. What are all these levels of leadership doing if they are not being negligent? Everybody should be held accountable.
And
the question is, whose decision is it? And who is in charge? That is the question that needs to be answered.
On that same issue, yesterday, in the same story, Dr. Atwine, the Minister of Health, came out to say that, and I will quote her, yes, the Permanent Secretary, beg your pardon. She came out to say that we share this cars, even as the hospital, we have problems, and at times we borrow the cars from the chairperson of the district. Is that okay? Is that, you know, justifiable?
Borrowing cars is okay, if they are personal cars.
But lending hospital cars.
But an ambulance,
yes,
which is supposed to be carrying a pregnant mother, and you have a choice to make between a dying mother and a politician who needs to go to a political rally.
Right.
Really, we need to ask ourselves some questions. Where are our priorities? I think it's an issue of priorities. Lending, local business and the way they do business, yeah, there may be some negotiations of things. Maybe they can help each other out on fuel. But if resources have been allocated to save lives, I was reading this morning that for every life saved, GDP is increased by up to about 4% in the year.
Correct.
That is the World Health Organization finding. Are we saving lives? Are we committed to make sure that we are saving every life of every Ugandan matters? Every life of every Ugandan matters. But then sometimes I think people have come to a stage where they think, yeah, rural people don't matter, the lower down the cadre, you know, people matter less. Every human being matters, and we need to be accountable. And if there is only one ambulance serving a population of 30,000,
there's a problem.
Really, that politician can find another place to borrow a car. That's my conviction. That car should be left to serve the 30,000 people who need it to save their lives.
Let's talk about the financing system, the health financing system, and what options are available. Because what the Ministry of Health is coming in its defense to say is that we are still behind in some issues because of the issue of lack of adequate funding. So what options are there to leverage on?
We can debate the issue of adequate funding until the cows come home. Unfortunately, the health of Ugandans is still in the hands of foreigners, if I may say. Up to 60% of our health budget is funded externally. There's nothing wrong with external people helping us. What if they turn off their tap? We recently saw in the Mexico policy, President Trump turning off some taps. Right. Because of the what is popularly known as the New Mexico policy or the gag policy or the gag rule. What if they turned off their taps? But in the event that they don't turn off their taps, the government has the responsibility to look after its citizens. People pay taxes. If the taxes are not enough, we need to talk about the issue of taxes. We need to have a national debate on how much we should be paying for taxes, but also how the taxes are utilized. Why do we fail to find money for health issues, but we find money for all other issues when we need it? I'm sure there are ways that money can be identified. The government needs to increase. The budget for health has been declining from about 9% in 2010, the proportion of the budget. Right. So the actual amount, the figure has gone up, but the share of the health budget has gone down from 9% in 2010 to now about 6.5, 6.8%. That is a reduction. And remember that even though the figure has been increasing, the purchasing power of the shilling has been going down.
True.
So effectively, the Ministry of Health has a very huge financial gap that needs to be met. And we need a very serious conversation. Are we satisfied with the status quo as a country? Are we sure that people are getting the quality of health care? Health care needs to be affordable, available, accessible, and it needs to be quality. Nobody should be given secondary health care. No. Primary health care should be for everybody, should be universal. Government for a long time has talked about implementing the universal health care scheme, or the national health insurance. Why can't we actualize it? There are so many people that have HIV that should be on treatment. Right now, the country is experiencing sporadic shortages of Septrin, one of the most important medications for people living with HIV. As a country, are we sure we are putting our money where our mouth is? We need to walk the talk.
Especially now that His Excellency the President has now ordered the Finance Ministry to come up with a budget fast and furious to ensure that they beef up security for all the MPs. Priorities, like you're saying.
Well, there's nothing wrong with protecting the members of parliament if they're under threat. There's nothing wrong with that. I would want to be protected. I mean, if my life was in danger. But it's not either or. It is not either we protect the MPs or we protect or we provide quality health services for our citizens. No, it is not an either or issue. For me, I want to believe if we sat down as a country and held ourselves accountable and held each other accountable, there are enough resources in this country to provide quality healthcare services. Let us begin small. Let us begin by making sure 80% of our people live in the rural areas. 80% of our people take their healthcare services from the rural health facilities. Health Center 2, Health Center 3, Health Center 4. Government is talking of eliminating the Health Center 2 and upgrading the Health Center 2s to Health Center 3s and making sure that there's a concentration of services at that level. But we need to make sure that 20%, 80% of our resources, which only go to, no, let me put it right, 80% of our people live in the rural areas where only 20% of the healthcare workforce is resident. And only about 20% of the healthcare budget is actually spent. We need to make sure that we increase the budget that goes to those lower level facilities. I have visited very many health center 3s in this country. You visit a mother, a midwife, and she tells you there are 2 in a regional referral hospital on duty on a Saturday. I was in Mbale Hospital about 3-4 months ago. And the midwife's there. And she says, look, when 40 mothers come to give birth, and you're 1 midwife on duty, or you're 2 midwives on duty, what do? One has a complication, the other has a challenge. We need to make sure that we increase the level of resources that go to these facilities. The referral hospitals should really be referral hospitals. The referral system in this country is broken. That's why people can afford to divert an ambulance, because they don't see the value for an ambulance being there on standby. Whether an ambulance is taking a person at that particular time or it isn't, it is on standby. An emergency can arise anytime. That is what we need to be looking at.
That brings me to my second question. When people speak about service delivery, they only think of the workforce. And we're not, beating this. The workforce is very key. But in the health sector, we've been having issues. Yesterday, still on the dailies, we had an issue of, the work... medical health, the workers at the medical center, torturing a pregnant woman. And this is something that you're seeing day in, day out. It's a continuous thing. We've been seeing in these health centers, even in the public centers here, X amount of people are supposed to be on duty. But when you go there, you find a smaller number. What is happening? What strategies can the government put in place to ensure that medical health workers are at their duty post, executing their jobs accordingly without fail?
There are 3 words that the government needs to address in this country very seriously. Number 1, impunity. There is so much impunity in this country. Anybody can do anything and get away with it. The only people who don't seem to get away with things are politicians. But everybody can do something and get away with it. And they get in trouble. I mean, nobody seems to hold any other accountable. A mother dies in a hospital, and the in-charge speaks about it like, yeah, unfortunately, the person died. Yeah, we are sorry the person died. And that ends the story. What caused that death? And is an investigation being done? Is anybody being held accountable? The second word that needs to be dealt with is the word laxity. Laxity in our way of providing services. People don't care. People come to work when they can. People come to work when they feel like. People don't realize that being a public servant, whether you work for a private sector organization or you work for government, you have been entrusted with a responsibility.
Yes.
You need to be in that office. You need to be there. But again, on the other hand, you have to pity the healthcare workers. I have seen wonderful healthcare workers that have said, I go there and do what? I was trained to save life. To sit in a health facility with no gloves, with no cotton wool, with no spirit. I cannot save a dying mother. And for me to look at a child dying, I can't. I would rather not be there. So let's make sure we equip the people, we train them, we train them in the soft skills of leadership, people handling, dialogue, talk, discussion, kindness, compassion, counseling. But at the same time, let's give them the equipment.
Right.
I mean, why should a government facility lack gloves? The other day I was driving to Mbale, and a trailer knocked a boda rider in front of me, and he was carrying a woman, and the woman broke her hand, and I stopped, and we carried this woman to Kaolo Hospital, Lugazi, and we got there, and all we found was a cleaner, and the only thing she could give us, honestly, was a trash bag, which she brought and put on metal, and said, I looked and I said, this cannot be. This is something that I saw with my own eyes. I want to believe that laxity should be punished. I want to believe that compromise, where people are satisfied with, what do we do? What do we do? Something can be done. Things can change. So, compromise, laxity, impunity, those words need to be dealt with. What can government do? Number one, train the people. Number two, pay them. Pay them well. Number three, hold them accountable. You either deliver, or if you feel you don't want to deliver, quit. Let somebody else. There are so many healthcare workers that have been trained that are not yet in employment.
Right.
If these who are sitting there are not comfortable giving the service, let others come and give the service. But before we condemn them and dismiss them, let's give them the resources, the facilities. Let's give them the gloves. Let's give them the medicine. Let the medicine be there, readily available. Let the people who are selling government medicines, whether those are healthcare workers, whether those are business people, whoever is caught stealing government medicine, they should be held accountable. If we do not increase our levels of accountability, levels of seriousness, we will continue to experience the same. I hear this talk where people say, you can't do that in a neighboring country. There are neighboring countries where you can't do that. Why do people feel Uganda is a wash basin where they can come and play and then run away and mess up things? Why can't we turn this around? I want to believe, and I want to speak to all Ugandans. It is not only the president who is going to change this country. Each one of us has a responsibility to turn this country around. For us, in the Advocacy for Better Health project, we say where everyone is accountable, everyone wins. Every Ugandan needs to be accountable. Everyone needs to feel it is their role, it is their responsibility. Just like health is our right. Health is everybody's right. But at the same time, we all have roles and responsibilities. I like the Americans. The Americans say when you see something, say something.
Say something.
Say something.
Yes.
But Ugandans will see somebody stealing medicine and they'll even actually praise and say, hey, he's wise, he's actually... These are things we need to deal with in society.
Yes.
And whether they are our relatives, the other thing is, because the system is so complicated. You have a relative who is a policeman, you have a relative who is in the office of the DPP, you have a relative who is a lawyer, a judge. Foreign people are calling each other and saying, save this child, save this person, save. I think we have come to a level where we need to say, you know what? People need to pay for some of their sins. We are not God. We are not the Holy Spirit.
So we need to be angry enough.
As a country.
As a country.
We need to rise ourselves to that level where we are not comfortable with the status quo.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming in studios.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for the great insight. I'm sure we've learned a thing or two. If the system is to change, then it's the responsibility of me and you. In case you're not comfortable with something that you've seen, speak out. Do not be quiet. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion. Thank you so much for coming in studios.
Welcome.
That has been it for Morning at 10 TV. My name is Malaki Villaodera. Be sure to join us again tomorrow, same time, 6:30 to 9 a.m. Have a blessed day.